Good evening. Welcome to the Kenmore Town of Tonawanda Union Free School District Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. District Clerk, please note that all trustees are present. This evening, following our Pledge of Allegiance, we will have our Star Spangled Banner performed by the Kenmore Band. As you know, Kenmore brings their own marching band along because it's go big or go home, right? And following that performance, we'll ask that you remain standing and bow your heads for performance of Amazing Grace in honor of those fallen and lost their lives through September 11th. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4A, approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve? So moved by Andrew, second by Michelle. Any discussion? There being none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor so signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 4B, approval of the minutes from August 14th, 2018, regular board meeting. So moved by Chris, second by Tom. Any discussion? There being none, I call for a vote. All those in favor so signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, item number 5 on our list is this evening's recognition. I'll turn this portion of the meeting over to Superintendent Bavino.
Good evening. It's one of our favorite part of our board meeting every month. We recognize some staff from our area schools, and tonight Kenmore is up for recognition. We're going to start with our student. If Jessica Fink wants to come up forward, please. this year, and more importantly, look forward to her huge smile and bright in her room. Aside from being an excellent student, Jessica is an outstanding athlete as well, running track and cross country for Kenmore East High, where she was captain. Jessica is also musically inclined. She's in the wind ensemble and treble chorus. Jessica has received numerous awards at Kenmore East and has been recognized by her teachers for her various accomplishments. She's in the top 10% of her class, yet she remains very humble and caring. She's a pleasure to work with as a student who represents the ideals of the Canton School District as well as Kenmore. Start with our support staff member, Lynn Pettipies. Come on. Lynn Pettipies has been working at Kenmore East for 23 years. Over the course of her career, she has served on numerous committees and has always been a supportive presence in the assistant principal's office. Lynn has assisted students with questions ranging from bus passes to student guests attending dances to graduation. She's also in charge of the Academic Eligibility List, Hall of Fame, and all the student awards ceremonies throughout the school. As a lifelong resident of the town, Lynn's 3 children also attended Kenmore East, and she was a very supportive and involved parent. Lynn Pettipies is an essential part of the Kenmore East community. She epitomizes the ideal of customer service and goes to great lengths to help students, staff members, and community members in every facet of her job. Mrs. Pettipies is a true professional and represents the way. Our faculty member this month is Mr. Jack Blanche. Come on up, Jack. For nearly 30 years, Jack Blanche has been a cornerstone of this district. He came to us after serving our country in the armed forces and taught literally thousands of children about the lessons he learned growing up: honesty, integrity, and self-reliance. Those who know him best see him as a gentle leader buried within a hardened exterior. The consummate tough but fair educator that students appreciate more and more as they grow through his class. During his time here, Jack became one of the premier coaches in Western New York at Kenmore East, whether on the basketball court or in the classroom. Jack leads by example. He loved watching his players grow over their time on the team while teaching them discipline, sportsmanship, and the value of hard work. In addition to his life at school, he and his wife Linda have watched their 2 children grow up here and graduate from Kenmore East to becoming the great young adults they are today. Every day we welcome Jack's quick wit and smile. He is a man respected and admired by his students and has served as a mentor and friend to his mom.
Sorry, item number 6. A is our Kenmore East High School presentation on the Wilderness Club. Again, I'll toss this over to
We
Mr.
will
Rubino.
welcome the Ken East team to come on up and make your presentation this evening.
Good evening. I'm Alex Swarta, kind of the guy in charge of Wilderness Club, I guess. Mr. Kresge is here with me, and we have a couple of students who are going to say a couple things too. Thanks for giving us this opportunity to showcase what we do. So Wilderness Club has been around since 1979. That's older than me. And here we go. Okay. The club objectives: we are really environmental focused in the club. We try to teach environmental appreciation and awareness by getting outside and being outside and exploring the natural environment. We provide opportunities for students to learn outdoor skills and to learn new ways to appreciate the outdoors. And we provide a service to the school. We take care of recycling on the first and second floor of Kenmore East, and obviously in our environmental kind of mindset. So we meet every Thursday after school, and well, this is kind of what I just said here, sorry. So our meetings, we collect the recycling, as I said. We plan trips, we plan outings, we do some kind of team building, team bonding type stuff, and then discuss preparedness, safety, and the environment as well. So, I don't know. Sorry. Okay, thanks. So the types of outings that we do camping, hiking, backpacking, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, canoeing, kayaking, whitewater rafting, rock climbing, mountain biking, night hiking. We don't necessarily do all of those every year, but most of those pretty much. And so we try to do an outing once a month or so. Given holidays and recesses, it's not always exactly once a month, but pretty close. We get out doing something. Sometimes they're full weekend events, sometimes they're just a day out. So, Mr. Kresge's going to talk a little bit about some of the curricular tie-ins. Thanks.
Yeah, I have to say, over the course of the last 3 years or so, I've been fortunate to be Alex's partner with the Wilderness Club. I also have the benefit of having taught earth science with Ralph Cartelli for the last 15 years. So I have a lot of that. If any of you know Ralph, he's a very enthusiastic, knowledgeable man, and he shared and imbued his love of earth science in me. So sometimes on these outings, I can drive the kids a little bit crazy because once we see some rock strata, that's kind of like when I go off. And maybe Hannah and Austin might be able to attest how boring that can be. Well, hopefully not too boring. So Wilderness Club, because we're outdoors, because we're local, really touches on a lot of the curriculum that happens in earth science. But not just there, also in living environment, which I've had the good fortune to teach in biology classes for a few years. I have about 5 or 6 years of experience there, and U.S. history as well. And we experienced some aspects of history, believe it or not, on a hike through Watkins Glen last spring, walking through an old trail that went through an old farm where we had run across some headstones at a family cemetery. Just a really wonderful experience for the students, and it's beyond enriching. When you have an experience to build knowledge around, it's really something that you can't replicate in the classroom. And being an educator in that environment is really special. I remember a night on that hike, I think it was our first night, thinking, wow, I can't believe this is my classroom right now. Looking over a glass lake and a beautiful sunset, star-filled sky. It's something that you can't just talk about. It's when you get out there and experience it and feel it, it's really special.
Thank you. Obviously, with a physical education kind of tie-in, we also are teaching outdoor skills and appreciation for working hard and sweating and getting dirty, and backpacking, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, rock climbing, mountain biking, hiking. These aren't things that necessarily everybody gets a chance to experience. And I was fortunate enough in my life growing up to have people to teach me these things and take me out, and I love doing this stuff. This is the kind of things that I live to do. And so I love the fact that I have the opportunity to do this through school, to take kids out and be that person for them. So, other benefits: general team building, leadership. We say to the kids when we're out camping and things that we're not taking them camping. We're providing opportunity for them to go camping. So they are doing everything. They are we're facilitating them going out and hiking, camping, all the things that we're doing. How we do it, the club, we own a lot of gear. We own backpacks, sleeping bags, tents, stoves, a lot of equipment. We own some snowshoes and things. And when we do have to rent or purchase gear, the club will subsidize the cost for the kids to keep the cost down. And we fund this through fundraising and also through some nominal fees we charge for the club, or for the outings. There's never been a time we'd ever tell anybody they couldn't go because of a $35 weekend or anything. So, if there's any time we need to cover something, we do. And transportation, we have to rely on parents to shuttle kids around. So it's something that takes a lot of coordination. So here I have some pictures. I'm not going to talk through all of these. I'm just going to scroll through kind of quickly, give you a visual kind of things that we're doing. And these are mostly from the last couple of years. They're pretty recent pictures for the most part. These guys were wiped out here. You guys want to talk a little bit while I scroll through some pictures?
If I may jump
Yeah.
in. So the students are going to talk in a moment, and obviously, standing here, you might realize there's a height requirement to be an advisor. I didn't make the cut, but the students are going to want to talk a little bit about what what it has meant to them. As I was previewing this PowerPoint, I was so jealous, and one of the things that Alex and Matt have done over the years is when they come back from a trip, they're always great about sharing photos. And it gets the whole school kind of riled up. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing all of these things right in our backyard. And it's kind of sometimes an overlooked part of a program at any high school, but the experience, the extracurricular experience beyond the classroom is really outstanding. And so now I'm going to turn it over. We have Hannah Crittenden and Austin Orlowski who would like to tell you a little bit about what their experience has been like.
My family and I used to go camping for much of the summer every year, and camping quickly became my favorite thing to do in the summer. But my camping and outdoor activities were mostly limited to just the summer, and we really don't go camping as much as we used to. When I joined Wilderness Club, it gave me an opportunity to do what I love to do all year round, and gives me new experiences doing things I've never done before, like cross-country skiing and backpacking. I've even started to buy my own equipment for backpacking. Over the summer, I got a new backpacking bag. Even though the club provides everything for us, I want to still be able to do these things after I graduate. I've made friends through the club as well, and last year we went places together outside of the club doing things outdoors, like the one time we went to the ropes course at Holiday Valley. As a club, we also collect recycling around the school, which gives us more responsibility, and it prevents the recycling from just being thrown out with the trash. Wilderness Club isn't just about experiencing something new. It's also about learning to conserve our ecosystem and give awareness about the state of our environment to students who may not have been concerned about it prior.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I started Wilderness Club when I was a freshman, and a couple of my friends from last year who graduated, they were the ones that kind of got me into it. And I was a little hesitant at first because I'm not the most outdoorsy person I know, but the first the first activity we did, we went to Stony Brook, and it was just a hike, and I already liked it. I already met a bunch of new people, and it was a beautiful hike, and something that I don't really get to do with my mom. We don't really go on different hikes because we only know the same ones. And then the camping trip was next, and while a hike is one thing, camping without any running water or bathrooms was totally different, in a tent for a weekend. So the weekend we went to Little Rock City in our Little Valley by Ellicottville, and it was a rainy November weekend and very cold. I slept in a two-person tent with 3 girls, and I had to stick my feet outside the zipper because I was too tall to sleep the width. My mom also sent me off with a sleeping bag, which she didn't know zipped, so I kept it unzipped the whole time. And we laid the tent down in the dark, so we put it in a nice puddle where the rain came in right near me. And then, but that night we did games by the fire, and that was a lot of fun. But then the next morning, we went on a really nice hike, and later we played Capture the Flag, and I was the one who slipped on the mud. So we had to move the game, and then my clothes were all wet for the rest of the night. And then for dinner, we cooked a mini Thanksgiving, but unlike Thanksgiving, we didn't eat together because it started pouring again. So we all separated in our tents, but I woke up that morning after going to sleep, cold and wet, And I got picked up by my mom, but I told her about all the amazing experiences I had that weekend. And I would have done it again and again. And I mean, the past years I haven't been able to attend all the events that I wish I could have with my schedule, but I'm really lucky that I joined Wilderness Club freshman year, and I'm excited for this year to keep recycling every Thursday. And if I wouldn't have joined, I would have missed out on some unforgettable times like that one that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And I met amazing people and had some great experiences.
Awesome. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you very much. Nice job.
Any comments or questions from the board? Well, Mr. Kresge, I'll let you know, we took the kids to Iceland this summer, and the very first trip we had to go to was where the two continental plates come together, because my husband, also being an earth science teacher, that was the #1 trip. And they were excited. They were running around like maniacs. So thank you for having our students have this experience, and they might not have been able to do this with their families, and if they were able to do it, to take it to the next level. So this is cool. Thank you very much. Okay, as always, we do allow a few-minute recess here, just if there's any families or people that were just here for the student portion of the presentation. Oh, looks like we have an interested crowd tonight. Okay, we're going to go ahead and reconvene here. We didn't need our full 5 minutes for that recess. And this evening, item 6C is our shared services presentation. I do want to make one correction that I misspoke about in public session last month. And we were discussing the $225 million matching funds. And that money is actually coming from New York State, not Erie County. And in order for those funds to be available or used on a project, they would have to happen within the same fiscal year. So that actually I don't know if I knew that part, but I was under the impression the money was from Erie County. So just that correction before we start our meeting. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Bovino. Mr. Piccato.
Good evening. I'm going to start with a brief overview, and then later on John will get into a little bit more of the details. But the purpose of this presentation is to provide the board with some information about a possible collaboration with the town on constructing a multi-use facility. These projects are rare, but there's a push now from Albany, and they're encouraging such collaboration. So the background, coming from Albany down to the county executives, they wanted the county executive to get together with municipalities. School districts were invited. However, the invitations basically went out to elected officials, so Dr. O'Malley represented the school district. And they talked about how we might go about engaging in these shared services. We subsequently met with the town, and we found that we were doing quite a few shared services over the years that were undocumented. So we began to discuss ideas. We had further meetings, and it's not moving. Here we go. In August, and then the town asked us to consider potentially collaborating on a multi-use facility. At our August 14th meeting, this was raised by Dr. O'Malley, and the board agreed to at least look into it a little further, which led to this presentation. We met again late in August to look at a number of those areas where we could formalize an agreement, and we discussed more issues about this potential shared athletic facility. On September 6th, we sat down with counsel from both sides and started to explore some of the legal issues that are involved. So the proposed project that the town originally planned for was, as you see there, the costs ranging up to $8 million. And of course, that was their starting point, so we started with that. Some project considerations. How would our students benefit from this? John will get into that in a little bit more detail, but we certainly feel for the general population and the special needs population, there's curriculum that can be involved in this new facility, certainly another space for our student athletes. Considerations for the space. We would probably end up adding on to the town's original design. We'd probably want, if we could work in a track there, some additional classroom space. We looked at, are there any potential uses beyond athletics and recreation? Where would this facility be located? Do we have enough space on district property? And how will this affect green space? How much will this project cost? Because when you get beyond the issue of the cost of the facility, there's personnel. Whose personnel is going to run this? Who's going to bear the cost? Equipment, ongoing maintenance. We are starting to work on our next capital project, and if we were to collaborate here, this would have to work into that capital project. It would certainly, I think the board's preference would be a proposition that would stand on its own. And what's our timeline in terms of our capital project as well as the town's? Legal implications. The town has some legal implications they need to look at. What are the benefits to town residents? What is the town's expected usage? Critical issues for us. Where's it going to be? Obviously, green space is at a premium. One of the big issues, which John will get into a little bit later, is how much state aid can we get for this, which is really the draw here for this contribution. What would the town's financial contribution be, and the management and usage of the facility? Thank you, John.
With this, obviously, it's a tight collaboration with the town, and we've invited Supervisor Eminger here tonight to say a few things in terms of the town's stance on the project. So, Supervisor Eminger, if you'd like to come up.
Everybody's getting nervous because they're saying the strict final here. But this is my ice rink file. The school district has been involved in this for a couple months. We've actually been involved in this for about 6 or 7 years. How much time do I have? Because,
30 seconds.
I'm a politician. I can talk forever. Okay. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting the town to come and speak to you tonight. I want to thank the school board and the school administration for all that you do for the youth in our community. Okay, it's about time we start doing more together, the town and the school district. There's been this dividing line that you shouldn't, and basically it was caused by Albany. A lot of it was caused by Albany. That line is going away though, not gone completely, but we wanted to talk to you. I want to talk to you a little bit about where the town is. I want to introduce two of my members of the town board who are here. My deputy supervisor and Councilman John Barnese. He's a little shy. He sits in the back. And Bill Conrad, Councilman Bill Conrad here in front. The three of us, unfortunately, have a meeting that we have to leave and go to after we give this presentation. So we're not leaving because we're not happy that we can't stay for the whole meeting, but we do have another meeting to go to. So Back in around 2011, 2012, real quick, I'll try, Councilman Krangle, you know, and other members of the town board came up with an idea. You know, our facilities are getting older. Our ice rinks are 60 years old, okay, older than me, okay, and not older than dirt, older than me. And they need, like anything that turns 60 years old, for those of you who are 60 years old or older, things start to break down, okay, and you gotta replace those items. Okay, both rinks are the same age, so they're both 60 years old. So we had to do something. We were losing revenue because hockey teams, other ice skating programs were not coming to the town. Okay, and I want to make one thing clear. Okay, this is an ice rink proposal that we're looking to do. This is not a hockey rink proposal. Okay, one of the things we found out when we had a study done last year by a company out of Denver, Colorado, they came in and said, you have to change your programs. You got to get figure skating. You got to get all these other sorts of programs. It's going to be a 12-month facility. It would be an ice rink for 10 months, and then over the summer, it would be used for other facilities. Hockey, I'm not a hockey player. This body wasn't meant for hockey, okay? What I've learned is that hockey teams start practicing the middle of August. Okay, so we have to try and accommodate those. So we put everything together, and then it got stopped. When, you know, 6-7 years ago, we had to stop for something called the Parker Freeze Sewer Interceptor Project, which we've spent $60 or $70 million, all of us have, okay, money on this project. And we have, unfortunately or fortunately, we have probably 100 or 150 million more dollars to spend on our infrastructure. That's something we have to deal with as a town. Okay, 2 years ago, our largest taxpayer shut down, the Huntley, which impacted the school district more than anybody. They lost $3 million in revenue. We lost $2 million in revenue. That money, we got aid from the state, that money evaporates in 2023. We got to prepare for that. Okay, so we put it on hold for a while. And about 18 months ago, 20 months ago, we started talking about the possibility of doing a new ice rink facility. And we crunched a lot of numbers, okay? And we looked at everything, and as Mr. Vivino was talking about, we had roughly about an $8 million project staring us in the face. We went through the numbers. We went through the numbers again. We went through the numbers again and again. Bottom line is, we, the town by itself, cannot make this facility financially feasible to do when you include the debt service, when you count all the revenue that's going to be brought in by the programs and everything else. So over the last 4 or 5 months, we've been teetering with, you know, how to do this. You know, we're going to put it out for a public referendum. So I guess that's where we stand tonight. If we can't reach an agreement, and you can see by, you know, the previous slide that you saw, we've done a lot in the last month and a half. We've come a long way. We've been meeting almost weekly with the school board and the school district to try and come up with some ways. We met with our attorneys, both sides' attorneys, last week. And John's going to get into the options that we're looking at in terms of location, okay? It just can't be done. The town is committed to it. All 5 members of the town board, okay, I shouldn't say the town board is committed to it, okay, if it's financially feasible, okay, and that's the big thing. We're close. That's why we approached the school district back in August about maybe doing some collaboration on the shared services. You know, it benefits everybody. This ice rink will benefit the town, it'll benefit the students, obviously the school district, and it really, we're going to do everything that we can to make this thing work, okay? I mean, it's that important to the town and to the school district. So we are going to be continuing our meetings. We got homework to do. We had homework to do when we left last week, and we're continuing to do that homework. And we are making progress. We want input from the public, and there's going to be a public meeting, at the end of this month, hopefully, where we're going to have invite the public to share their ideas. Okay, the people sitting at that table over the last 6 weeks, we shared our ideas, but we don't have all the answers by any stretch of the imagination. We want the public to give us their ideas and what they would hope to see. The facility that we have, and we have drawings. We've spent a lot of time and a lot of energy on this project over the last 7 years. So we have a little bit of a head start that helps us in this process. We can't use the facility that we have designed, not designed, but that we have envisioned and have drawn and have site plans on, because quite frankly, it's too small. It's a 42 to 44,000 square foot facility. The new facility, okay, and I'm going to be optimistic. I'm not going to say the proposal. It's our new facility will be larger because it has to have classroom space to accommodate, obviously, school district needs. Special needs will be addressed in the facility for the special needs children, and which is great, which is outstanding. I could go on and on. This is really exciting, okay? Really exciting from everybody's standpoint. So be aware of what's going on. Pay attention to our meetings. Call up the school board. Call up the town board. We'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. We can make this happen, okay? The school district maybe can't do it by themselves. The town of Tonawanda can't do it by ourselves. But together, we can make it happen, okay? There's nothing that can't be accomplished on this project if we don't do it together. And we have advocates in Albany, I know, that will be fighting for us. And I know we have everybody here. Well, I don't know that. I know we have everybody on the town board who will be fighting for it as well. So hopefully we can see you at the end of this month, beginning of next month, whenever we have the meeting. Hopefully we'll see you and all of your neighbors, and we'll be glad to answer any questions at that time. Good enough?
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Supervisor. So we'll transition over to impact directly with the Kenton School District. What I want to focus on are some conversations we had around how this rink and this facility may impact our students. So we broke this into some different categories, and the first one is just a general population of students. We're looking for additional physical education space. We've been working closely with our athletic team or department rather, to look at what the possibilities are for this additional space and how that can benefit our students athletically. So expanding our physical education curriculum, potentially introducing some kind of a recreational skating or ice skating into that curriculum. Superintendent Bavino did mention indoor track. We have a vibrant track team at Kenton. Additional fitness and conditioning space. There could be some community education implications as well. And then something new, pathway to health sciences, maybe collaborating with some local colleges and looking at additional classes that could put our students on a pathway to some kind of athletic training program or physical therapy program. Another piece of that is special education. There's a lot of opportunities for the district to engage our special education student population with mentorship opportunities with our students through SABA, Gliding Stars, and some more adaptive physical education programming. And then sled hockey is another sport for our students to take advantage of. And then the other piece of that is athletics, primarily athletic facility. This would certainly help with our hockey teams. We have 3 hockey teams right now. Currently, there really isn't a space that we can call our own for home games. Our boys, Kenmore West and Kenmore East, use various rinks throughout Western New York to call home, and then our girls' combined team use the Lincoln rink right now. So a previous slide had shown kind of what the expectations were in terms of usage from the towns. So when we look at our athletes and what our teams need, you can see for hockey, approximately 15 weeks of usage with about 8 hours a week, we estimated with our athletic department. This would be a multi-use facility, so we could then possibly turf over that ice for our soccer teams for additional fitness and conditioning and workouts to train for the season. And then if this were to include a track, we would obviously be able to accommodate our track teams. And then we also looked at the possibility of batting cages as well. And then in line with our strategic plan, we could utilize additional instructional space for group work that may be coinciding with the Family Support Center. we threw some ideas out there with maybe some yoga and meditation to really hone in on mental health and wellness. And then looking at community service projects, and again, going back to that ice rink, ice skating for that character building component. So there's 3 locations that we considered. As previously mentioned, where were we going to put this facility? What space was available? Did the district have any space? And I'm pretty sure we all know we're pretty tight on green space, or any space really that we can use to expand. So we did discuss many locations, and there were some factors that we had to consider when looking for space. Who is going to be the owner of that property? And based on who the owner is or could be, how does that work in terms of financing this facility? Because there are laws in place in terms of bonding as a municipality or school district that the owner would be the bonder on that project. So we're using multiple sources of funds, so we would have to put that lead agency in front of that financial borrowing. And then depending on that space, there's parkland considerations and that land alienation. That's the whole process in and of itself that we would have to deal with as well in designating that as usable space outside of parkland. So I'll go through the 3 locations. We looked at Lincoln Park, Brighton, and then the space between the Hoover Complex and the Aquatic Center. So we kind of broke it into a pros and cons list in terms of each space. So focusing in on Lincoln Park, obviously this is close to our Franklin Complex and our Parker facility. It's next to that it's adjacent to that existing ice rink as well. There is ample space for construction, and it's also close to the bike trail. However, the cons with Lincoln Park is it is embedded in a neighborhood location, so we did want to factor in that additional traffic, that additional potential noise and parking that would take place by introducing a new facility into that space. There's low visibility, meaning that it is buried in a neighborhood and not easily accessible in terms of from a major highway or thoroughfare. And I did mention the highway. So here's a aerial view of the Franklin complex, or Lincoln, next to the Franklin complex, and this would go to the west or the left of what you're seeing right now. And you'll see a lot of these aerial views do incorporate baseball diamonds, which we did speak to the town, and they assured us that they are somewhat underutilized in their current capacity. The next space we considered is the green space I had mentioned before between Hoover and the Aquatic Center. So pros to this, it is close to the Hoover complex. It's right next door. And it's also right next to the Aquatic Center, which offers additional parking as well. And it's arguably in a more visible location right off of Sheridan there. And I had mentioned the accessibility previous, but this is a little more accessible right off the 290. So some of the cons here, there is a loss of green space. Because depending on the size of the facility, it could take a majority of that space in between those 2 complexes. And right now we have tennis courts, basketball courts, and a playground that would have to be moved and shifted. We talked to our buildings and grounds and athletic department and felt that it'd be possible to move those courts and playground to the other side of Hoover, where that green space currently is between Hoover and the administration building. There's also limited space for this facility. When you look at all 3 of them, this probably has the smallest footprint. And then this would also require that parkland alienation process, which is an entire process that would need to take place for this to happen. So here's an aerial view. The courts and I was speaking of are right there, and then the playground is to the south of those. So those would potentially be moved over to the other side of the Hoover complex. And then finally, Brighton. This is the pros to this. There's no it's not tightly situated into a residential area, and there is high visibility right off the 290. So with Brighton, we're talking about kind of where near the Golf Dome is and where the existing rink is. There's more direct accessibility from the Youngman. It's adjacent to the existing facility, and there's ample space for construction. However, one of the cons for this is that the town would lose the pool, although they are investigating and planning on a splash pad, I believe. That would be to the east. Oops. So here's an aerial view. The proposed facility would go to the east of where the dome and the existing rink are, would take over some of that space, and then further to the east would be that splash pad. But then across the street, if additional parking is needed, there's space to expand that as well. So we can't make this happen if we can't pay for it. And being a school district in the state of New York, there are certain constraints that we need to consider, and there's certain formulas and other variables that come into how building aid is generated. Just like our existing capital projects that we've taken on in the past, all hinges on building aid. We're lucky enough to have a strong building aid ratio of 76%, meaning that the state will pay 76 cents on the dollar for every dollar we spend, assuming multiple variables, but for layman's terms, we would be able to get that amount paid towards the project. Now, there are a couple of factors that have to be considered. I won't go into the detail because I'll put everybody asleep, but maximum cost allowances and building aid units are two pieces that we need to consider. And basically what a maximum cost allowance is a ceiling on how much the state is willing to aid you on any sort of project. And building aid units are individual units based on potential capacity of instructional space. And those are broken out into different grade ranges, and special education is a separate category as well. But basically, if we were to build a classroom that has a capacity for 30 students, we would get aided on 30 students based on that grade range at a certain dollar number. So there's a lot of moving pieces, so that's why it's important for us to incorporate that instructional space to generate and maximize the amount of state aid that would be available to us. And we also want to factor this into the overall scope of our 2019 project. We have briefly talked about the next capital project coming our way with an anticipated referendum in December of 19. So there's a lot of work that still has to take place in this district. As we all know, we have aging facilities that haven't been kept up or maintained as they should have, so we have a lot of catch-up work to do. So we want to make sure that that's a priority, but that we can potentially fit this proposed rink in as well without any adverse financial impact. And then looking at the local tax impact, we've been strategically putting funds away in our capital reserve to not have to go to the taxpayer above and beyond what we already have to finance a capital project. So that's a priority for us, and I'm sure for the board, to make sure that we're not putting any additional tax impact because of our capital projects. Now, a proposed timeline. So as I just mentioned, for Kenton schools, we're looking at a potential referendum in December of 2019. So working back from there, we've been obviously working with the town and internally on our own projects to see how this is going to all come together. So with our existing capital projects, what we do is we focus a lot on our building condition surveys, which are administered every 5 years to really give us a snapshot on the physical health of our buildings. So we base a lot of our capital decision work, or decision making rather, off of that document. And then focusing on the town's timeline, in our last meeting, we were looking at what it would take to make this happen. And if we were to do this collaboratively and together, the town would need a decision by the end of calendar year 18. So that's coming up quick. So we have a lot of work to do. So that brings us to our next steps. As Supervisor Eminger had mentioned, so long as the board is willing to move forward, we were exploring a co-hosted meeting with the Kenton School Board and the Town Board to solicit town feedback and community feedback. We certainly want to continue this financial feasibility study because if we can't pay for it, we really can't move forward. So I've been reaching out to our representatives at State Ed and Facilities Planning to really sit down and talk to them, whether it be a conference call or a face-to-face meeting, because this is something different, this is something new, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. So it's advantageous of the districts to really sit down with State Ed and kind of go over what we're proposing to see if this is going to work and how we can make it work. And then we would look to the board to proceed whether or not with this project. So we have this graphic here. It's a three-legged stool, and I just wanted to make the analogy that if any one of these legs fail, then the whole thing fails. So we would need, obviously, building aid eligibility. If this financially does not work for us and does not fit into our existing capital project, then it's not something that we could proceed with. And the same thing with the town. If we can't get this collaborative piece to work and get cooperation from the state and our legislators with the park alienation, then that's going to be another difficulty. And then obviously, Kenton board approval and town board approval to move forward collaboratively with this. So as far as we see it, if any one of these pieces doesn't work or come together for us, then it would be difficult for us to move forward with that project. And with that, we'd like to open up for any discussion or questions that the board may have.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who was involved. As Supervisor Eminger intimated, this has been a really lengthy process, but actually, I mean, the meetings have been kind of fun to attend and hear what people had to say. So I would definitely like to hear from each of the board members, whether you have questions or just comments, as this is something unusual, and I think everybody should have a say, their time on the floor to ask. So I don't know if somebody wants to go first, or if we just want to go right down the chain. Chris?
I'll go because I actually have a question. One of the earlier slides mentioned ongoing maintenance costs. How would we determine what those could possibly be? Is there any way to know?
I think tonight we wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what those are, but anything in terms of how we typically maintain our buildings, anything from custodial staff to concession stand working to maintaining the structure itself to all the mechanics that go inside of it, that's something that the district and the town would have to discuss on who would be responsible for that. We're not necessarily, I don't feel, at that point yet, but that's something that must be considered moving forward if we decide to engage in a project like this, because we obviously have two different unions that are protecting their own members, so we need to factor that in terms of how this is going to look in terms of maintaining the facility. So I don't know that necessarily answers your question.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a lot to think about. I guess I'm just worried, too, about loss of revenue. You know, I know that there's an opportunity to let other organizations use the facility for a fee, but I really don't know what it costs to maintain an ice rink, but I do hear things like Northtown Center loses money every year and stuff like that, so I guess I would just be concerned about the cost of upkeep on the rink.
Sure. Yeah, actually, why don't we give you a mic, because you may be able to.
These are questions that we've all, at the town level, have discussed ad nauseum. Okay, we know, we have a pretty good idea of what it's going to cost to run our facility. Like I said, the joint facility will be perhaps a little bit more. I'm not going to get into the location pros and cons because there's more than was talked about here. Okay, but we had the consultant come in from Denver, as I alluded to earlier, and he gave us some idea, he does these all over the country, so he has a pretty good idea of what the operation and maintenance cost will be. So together, it's a little bit harder hurdle to get over. I mean, I'm sorry, alone, it's a little bit harder hurdle to get over. Together, that hurdle really is almost eliminated, in my opinion. The cost of running and operating the bigger question is personnel. You got two unions, we have two unions. Okay, we have to address. But from a financials, and believe me, and anybody who's been following the paper probably knows that I wasn't a big advocate of the town rink because it didn't make financial sense. This makes financial sense, in my opinion, for everybody. If we can pull this off, okay? I've talked to people over the last week. I've talked to lawyers. I've talked to finance people who are involved with school districts, and they say, when they hear this idea, they say that this is revolutionary in the state. This could be an example across the state, and this is what the state wants school districts and municipalities to go into. So, like I said earlier, I wasn't a big proponent of the town rink for financial reasons. I am a big proponent of this for the same reason, for financial reasons. It makes sense from our standpoint and yours. Everybody's got to win. If it's just a win for the town, then we're not going to do it. It has to be a win for the school district as well.
Any other questions, Chris?
Nope, I'll just make a comment though. My other concern really is just the green space, and we've talked about this before, so it doesn't come as a surprise to anybody here. It seems like in all the scenarios, the cons, a lot of the cons were loss of green space and or loss of existing facilities like some baseball diamonds, a soccer field over there at Lincoln, which it looked like, and maybe even a lacrosse field. And my concern with the Brighton location is that additional parking across the street where there's already baseball diamonds would need to be used too. So those are just.
Yeah, and we were sure to bring that up in the meeting, and we didn't put all the detail in the PowerPoint, but I don't think Supervisor Eminger would mind me saying, these meetings were also attended by Mr. Campanella, who is our supervisor of Youth Parks and Rec. And when the issue of baseball came up, and at that first meeting that we had, Dan Wiles was present as well, so he had a historical perspective of Youth Parks and Rec as well. And he spent some time talking about how baseball has diminished in the town, and that really there used to be 45 teams, and there's, what, 9, 10? Yeah. So, because that was a concern, you know, if we're limiting these green spaces, these recreational spaces for people, where would they go? And they assured us there was more than enough. But just to answer that particular question, it still doesn't, a parking lot is a parking lot, right? Even if you paint it green, so. Yep, Michelle?
Okay, I have one question and a comment as well. You had mentioned that the lead between the town and the school district would be based on land ownership, and I seem to recall in a previous conversation that for the district to be involved in this, we needed to own the land. So could you just clarify that?
Sure. So we looked into it further, and I think the ideal scenario for the district is that land ownership, but there is a possibility as a long-term lease, because we spoke with legal counsel and pulled up some state ed documentation that if we were to engage into a long-term lease, it would make sense with something at least 15 years or more, because that would match the amortization of a facility, but actually rather 20 years if we were going to build a new facility. So there is a possibility that if we were to engage into a long-term lease, and we discussed that briefly as an option, we would be able to generate building aid based on that.
Thank you. And I think my comments are this. Thank you for this presentation. It really felt like a nice, inclusive list of everything that needs to be considered, and obviously it just scratches the surface of all the information that both sides will need to proceed. My concern is that we need to get really deep into this information in 3.5 months, which is not a lot of time. And we need to get as much community input as possible. Obviously, if it's not going to work for the district from the district standpoint, you know, that goes to those 3 legs of the stool, and we're going to make a decision accordingly. But we need to gather a lot of information from the community and from your research in a real short time frame. So I think that's my biggest concern.
So just to comment on that, I think it's a great point. We all are recognizing the difficulties we're facing with capital projects at the state, and that it's taking over 40 weeks for a review. So I'm trying to remain optimistic to get a face-to-face meeting with some of our project managers, but that is a realistic expectation that we need to hold ourselves to. As Supervisor Eminger did mention, this is a revolutionary potential project. This is something brand new, and you know, new initiatives with state ed, especially facilities planning, don't always go incredibly smooth. So it's up to us to really drive those conversations and to get in front of the right people, and that's what we're going to try and do as quickly as possible, you know, moving forward.
Michelle, do you have a specific thought in mind besides the joint community forum that might be a good outlet for gathering information?
You know, I think I feel like we try to get community input as a board all the time. It's just a question of really being successful in doing that. You know, the community, perhaps more than one community forum to make sure it's convenient for everybody, but obviously putting it out on all the websites, media is obviously a useful tool. and word of mouth through the parents. You know, I'd like to see a lot of people coming to these board meetings and really giving their input if this is the only venue that they can get to as well.
What about, I don't know that you were attending these meetings or not, but when they were doing the consolidation hearings, they traveled around a few schools. Maybe we could think about, instead of one community forum, 2 community meetings to be hosted at each of the 2 high schools, and a letter could be sent home and to all the feeder schools to invite parents to come in. You know, they go to Lindbergh, they could go to the West meeting, or, you know, if they can't make that meeting, that might be.
Yeah, because that's, if that's where their children are going to school, that's the convenient location for them. That's a great idea, because it's obviously, if it's a convenient location where community members know the turf, so to speak, they're going to be more apt to come than if we're just going to a community location that they're not familiar with.
Okay.
So make it accessible.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Gianni?
This is an exciting prospect. Obviously, we need to see what the actual numbers look like before we can really pass judgment on this. That said, I think, you know, even the notion of, you know, whether this project needs to be profitable or even cost neutral is not necessarily a judgment that I would necessarily pass. I mean, our school district isn't profitable, right? We collect taxes and we educate our students, and this is potentially part of that. So at the end of the day, we're going to have to make a at least moderately subjective decision about the value of that for the students and to our community as a whole. That said, I definitely see some things in here that are really promising. I thought the mention of sort of a potential career and technical academy around PT or sports science is something that's interesting. Might even be worth having a conversation with BOCES to see if that's something that they might be interested. I know we do some of our own CTE things internally here in the district, but that's something that might be interesting and might help us sort of fill out the way that we use the facility if we're bringing in students from outside. I guess I would also say the extent to which we do run into legal roadblocks, balanced with the extent to which this is financially feasible, as a board member, I would be absolutely committed to doing some advocacy work if we need to actually change laws to make this work. So I think that that's something that we also need to kind of think outside the box on, is to say, if state ed comes back and says, no, you can't do this because of law XYZ, then maybe we need to have a conversation about changing law XYZ. So obviously that would complicate things, but we also know that we have good relationships with our state lawmakers in the area, and that's something that we've worked on successfully in the past. So just put that one out there. But thank you for all the work that we've done so far, and I'm excited to see this go forward. I'm fully supportive of doing a meeting in conjunction with the town board and looking for input that way and the other way that we can from the rest of our community. The only other thing that I would also mention, this is not the first time I said the only other thing, so that's kind of bogus, right? The one thing I would mention is, obviously this is something that needs to be considered in the context of an overall capital project, and at some point it would be helpful to have a meeting where we discuss this potentially with the public in the context of the broader capital improvement needs of the district as a whole, and that's obviously something we need to balance. But overall, I'm excited that we're having this conversation and looking into this.
Tom?
I have one question and a brief comment. The question pertains to the choice of locations, the proposals. You mentioned one possibility was the space between Hoover and the Aquatic Center, and that Buildings and Grounds had judged that the playground, tennis courts, and basketball courts could be shifted to some other green space. I'm trying to picture where precisely that might be. Would it be where the small track and soccer field is on the other side?
Actually, I believe Mr. Banker said only the basketball courts would fit there, not also the tennis courts.
Oh, yeah, I may have been mistaken.
Yeah.
But yes, that was the initial thought, is to move it to the other side of the Hoover complex where that green space is.
The green space that's being used for track and soccer.
Where the existing track is, yes.
Okay, so it's giving up some green space then. And my comment is very brief, and that is that baseball diamonds are used by more people in the community than just organized baseball teams.
Okay. I, like Andrew, I'm very excited about this process and watching it evolve over time, and also realizing that my time as being part of this is just about done, because once we do make the decision, if we are going to move forward, then of course this would be turned back over to the district hands, as that is day-to-day operation. It's an unusual situation, the way they have tasked board members to be involved in this. I guess mine are mostly, I'm excited for the student opportunities. Having worked as an athletic trainer in that facility, type of facility, I never thought of that. Actually, just seeing it on the slide was the first time that I saw it. I missed it when I read that, but that's phenomenal in physical therapy, and those are growing fields for sure. My two things I guess I want to make sure that we're clear on is that aid, and you had the number 76%, that would be the ideal, but we don't know that we would have that. That's what you're having.
That's best case scenario.
Best case.
In reality, it would probably be lower, just like some of our turf fields weren't aided fully at 76%.
What were they, 50%?
Around there at the end of the day, when you balance it out, it's probably around more 50%.
And I guess, too, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I'm also in favor of the land ownership, merely because if we're putting this investment in, the building will have a longer life use than 20 years, and none of us are going to be probably on the school board by 20 years. I don't know, but I don't
And I'm
think
guessing,
so.
too, to make this, feasible in terms of the state perspective, they'd want some guarantees, too, because they'd be putting up X amount of dollars. So they would want some guarantees, knowing that this facility is going to be used as it's intended today, 50 years from now.
Sure. But I too am excited, and I guess what I'll ask the board then at this point, are we saying this evening then we are okay with moving forward with that public discussion? Perhaps we can work with Supervisor Eminger and his board to see how many of their people could attend. I know we've done when we used to travel around, we used to have the long tables in the front, so it could be a joint effort, non-board meeting, but just more of a community forum style. So is that what we'd like to head to?
I would like to have the community forum, yes.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I guess it really doesn't matter what, we need to know if the community wants this and if they're going to support it, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the legs on the stool too. That plays into our decision, right? If we hear strong opposition, sure.
I'm in support of moving forward with the community forum.
Okay. Anton?
Yeah, we hear constituents' voices.
Sure, great, okay, perfect. So then,
One thing to add.
of course.
Talk about a joint, not a meeting per se. We have open meetings laws. I don't know if they apply to you. So if we have three or more members of our board together, we gotta send out all notices.
Sure, so we'll get together on some possible dates. I'll talk to my board members. Yeah, it's the reporters in the audience, you know how they are, right? Sure, that would be fine, because we would want to conduct it. And perhaps, too, we can talk to Jenna. I believe the city of Tonawanda had a joint meeting with their school board, maybe what that looked like. So certainly anybody would be welcome to come. We would send out the notice for the schools, but also Mr. Finelli can send out notices to press releases and invite the public as well. So I think it would be good if we had heard. And we'll have our style is to have a similar presentation of what we just had, to bring everybody up to speed for the people who aren't there, and then we can hear pros and cons. So we'll be in touch.
We have our town board meeting on Monday, so maybe if we can get the date of that meeting before Monday, I can certainly get out to our meeting then.
Okay.
So we'll talk.
Sure. This evening, later, I know you have to run to a meeting. We will be setting up dates for our community forum, so I'll ask my members about their availability. Maybe shoot for October then, November, something like that. September. So we'll throw it out there and see what sticks. Thank you for your time. Okay, item number 7 on our list is public comments, and we do have several public comments this evening. I'd like to read our policy on public comments before people get started. These are general guidelines for making public comments at Board of Education meetings. Any person may make a public comment by placing his or her name, address, and topic on the sign-in sheet. Public comments during public session are one-way communication. The speaker will be recognized by Board President, stand at the podium, and state his or her name and address. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. A tone will sound when the speaker's 3 minutes are up. At that time, the speaker should conclude his or her comments. At a public board meeting, no person may orally initiate charges or complaints against individual district employees or board members. The speaker will be stopped if any board member or district employee is mentioned by name. Speakers are expected to avoid defamatory, abusive, or vulgar language. The president may terminate the speaker's privilege of address if, after being called to order, the speaker persists in improper conduct or remarks. First speaker this evening is Jeff Orlowski.
Good evening, Jeff Orlowski, 911 Main Street, teach at Kenmore-East. And I wanted to first start by thanking you for giving me the honor of being the Kenmore girls Grand Island team varsity coach for the last 8 years. I'm quite impressed with the presentation tonight. Didn't expect that, and it was kind of nice. First of all, I'm here because I was sitting in the meeting last month, and I heard about the chance the school district of the town might consolidate services to build a new ice hockey rink. I was like a kid in a candy store, smiling ear from ear in the crowd. I began to think about what this could do for Kenmore. So I ask you tonight to visualize being behind the bench, coaching a high school hockey game. You get the joy of watching hours and hours of hard work come to fruition. You see 20 young athletes sitting there with an excitement in their eyes, nervousness in their stomachs, and anticipation to play a game they love. You look up and you see a crowd of hundreds of high school students and parents sitting in a beautiful new rink built in the town with shiny new bleachers, gleaming red goalposts, and bright fluorescent lights. You're probably thinking of hockey players playing on that ice surface that looks like a sheet of glass waiting for the puck to drop. I, however, look differently at that. I look beyond the ice rink. I see the students that have learned to balance their lives to fit athletics into an already rigorous academic load. Students who have learned hard work for a common goal with a group of peers. They have learned teamwork, discipline, sportsmanship, work ethic, and integrity. 20 young athletes would become a family. That is what I see. These players would be the first to reap the benefits of a new rink in the town. I've been to a lot of board meetings over the years, and or the last year or so, trying to get this rink built in the town. The girls are behind it, the boys teams are both behind it. We don't have enough room in the town. Our rink is small. We actually play on a small surface at Lincoln, and we don't get the opportunity to skate on the larger surfaces until we're in the sectionals, and it becomes a different game. Our locker rooms open up right to the casino where people are standing. So the girls that come out, you can see everybody in the locker room changing. There's no shower facilities there. It's not the most ideal place to play, not to mention it's 50 to 60 years old and it's ready to fall apart. So building a new rink would be ideal. We'd be able to get ice times rather than 5:45 in the morning. We practice before school at times. We practice late at night sometimes based on when the town has the rinks. We fight other school districts for use on that ice. We finally got some ice times that we're playing two days a week for each team when we should be playing 4 to 5 practices a week. So we could definitely use the extra ice that a new facility would bring. But I also see the benefits way beyond a hockey rink. As a father of 2 Kenmore-East students, one who spoke tonight at the Wilderness Club, so I was very proud of him. But I see a lot more benefits, starting with recreation skating. Okay, can we have parent-teacher nights at the rink where they're skating together and things like that? It was awesome to see some of the things that Mr. Piccato and Mr. Bavino had up on the signs, because I thought of very similar things. Oh, I'm running out of time, sorry. Okay, and the PE department in Saba and things like that we could do it would just be amazing. I had a nephew that was at Osaba and did, wonderful things. To see him come home with the smiles on his face. You have sled hockey and all those other good things that were there. So I just want to thank you for the consideration. You guys are great, and you guys continue to do good things for the school district, and a hockey rink would be perfect. But it would be more than just a rink. It would be an educational facility, which is what I would like to see. Thank you.
Cynthia Merrick.
So I live on 110 Crosby. Had no idea that there was going to be a shared facilities discussion tonight, so I don't know if this is going to be too small of a thing to care about or if it just lands perfectly. I've been thinking that it would be a good idea to move the Kenton Library into the middle school. I personally think that the Kenton Library is not very useful, and I think it's such an eyesore in the village of Kenmore. That way you could charge rent to the Erie County. You can make interesting spaces, including having a stage, be able to segregate children's areas, multimedia. Then you could tear down that ugly building, and you could, I understand that the town is having a problem with the parking spaces for the new Masons building apartments. You could charge, mandate that 6 spots are for the apartment building, and a mini rent for that go to the school district, along with making probably the churches and also just parking for this building, as you see everybody lined up here for what's really not really just a school board meeting. I also have another shared space idea. We could take one of the empty school buildings, and probably in the future empty school buildings, and with the town work on a new business startup space, because school buildings have kitchens, industrial tech equipment, spaces, the high voltage electricity, all the things that small businesses need. And with the town, you could do graduated, you get free space, free taxes, and then as you start making money, your rent goes up, your taxes go up, and then when you get big enough that you're not fitting in a school building anymore, you make promises to stay in Tonawanda. And then with the earlier presentation, I think some senior physical activity could go in that building, the ice rink building. And I also think when they mentioned the Hoover spot, maybe it would be a good idea to offer to get rid of the ugly plazas that are also really old and just make us look like Niagara Falls Boulevard, get rid of some of that stuff. Maybe that could be the parking for the new ice rink.
Our third speaker this evening is Kyle Prey.
Kyle Prey, 164 Willow Grove South, and I want to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight, and definitely very excited about this proposal when I first heard about it. I support this idea of the school district teaming up and collaborating with the town, not only for the purpose of getting some new facilities built and using them to their maximum capability, but also I think it'll enhance both our youth programs and our high school and middle school programs, with the town programs kind of being the feeder programs to the high school programs. If we start working together in that aspect, and I'm not just talking hockey or anything else like that, but in all sports, if we can do more of that, I think we're going to see our athletic programs improve as well. I'm not going to go into a lot about the rinks because Jeff really covered that well. But real quickly, our rinks, our dressing rooms are too small. They have no showers. The seating for fans is about 30 with the bleacher space and everything. And our ice surface is way too small, which is why it's very hard for the boys' teams to even attempt to play a game there. We practice there, but that isn't always the best situation as well, too. But the thing I want to really hope everybody keys in on here is the multi-purpose part of this facility. I know I heard the loss of baseball diamonds, and I can understand that being a concern. But also, if you build a multi-purpose facility with batting cages and some turf areas, a walking track inside the facility. I go to many rinks up in Canada, and they have, there's many adults in there during the day who are walking, senior citizens who can't walk during the winter time because of the weather are in there using the walking track. All these different things can be used for baseball, for hockey, for soccer, rugby, whatever it may be, all these different sports. And we live in an area where, unfortunately, we have, some nasty weather 8 to 9 months a year. And this kind of facility, I think, is what exactly many districts need, whether it's an indoor track or anything else like that, to really have a community center where the community can gather and really bring people together and be something proud of. So I hope you keep open-minded on this. I think it's innovative. I think it's new. But I think there's really a lot of exciting possibilities to it that we can all really touch base with. And like I said, it could be a community center, not just a rink or anything like that, but where everybody gathers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our fourth speaker this evening is Ryan Hahn.
Hi, my name is Ryan Hahn, and I'm a senior at Kenmore-Tonawanda hockey for the varsity team there. I started playing hockey when I was very young with the Tonawanda Lightning. As I got older, many practicing games were at Hyde Park. Hyde Park ice was available sooner, had showers, larger locker rooms, and regulation ice size, unlike Lincoln and Brighton Arena. Having a new rink supported by the school would help bring the community together and increase school pride. A new rink that high school games can be played at would allow more students to attend since they can walk or ride a bike. Support from our fans would help win games. Having the school mascots on the locker room doors would give a sense of pride in our schools. Hopefully when young hockey players see this, they will look forward to playing for their high school someday. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, speaker number 5 is Hannah Monroy. I'm sorry. Oh, we got a team. Oh my goodness. Karen Whitelaw, you settle down.
I'm Hannah. First, I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to spend the past 5 years playing the sport I love while representing the school district. When I heard the district was thinking about building a new rink, I got excited because the town could definitely use one. Sadly, Lincoln and Brighton Arena aren't the buzzing hockey place it used to be. People are going to Northtown Center or Tacoma Rink, where the facilities are of higher quality. At Lincoln, the ice isn't even white. Hockey in Tonawanda is losing its charm. However, a new rink can bring back the spirit of our community and pave the way for the future sons and daughters who should have the same great experience I had in a new rink they'd be proud to call home ice.
80s. Okay, speaker number 6, Matt Miller.
My name is Matt Miller from 329 Ashford Ave. And first, thank you for the presentation was excellent and just allowing us all the chance to speak right now. Personally, I learned to skate over 27 years ago and played hockey in the town ever since. And I've turned that into a bit of a coaching career, coaching a special ed students and other students with disabilities get some adaptive equipment, and just how empowering that is to these students to hear their testimonies. So the possibilities from an education standpoint are just endless. You know, programs like Cast 6 Years of Summer, we can have our own in-house program, and really give these students who otherwise might not ever touch the ice a real chance for excitement. And just the community stuff that we talked about as well with, you know, family rec skates, community rec skates. And I think back as a student, I would have loved to see some of my teachers on the ice. So just, you know, the opportunity to be in a less structured environment with members of the school board, so, or the school community. So I really thank you for the time and the presentation so far, and I hope you do everything possible to make this realistic dream. So thank you.
Oh yeah, when we go on our facilities tour, I'd have to walk around the outside. I don't skate, but you can teach me. Okay, and speaker number 7, the only person here not to talk tonight about the shared services is Mrs. Malkowitz. Allie Malkowitz, is she here? I didn't see you. Thank you.
I'll talk about skating. I'll lace up my harness and I'll be there.
Did you say you were going to be giving skating lessons?
Sure.
Awesome. Okay.
Except I'm a judge, so I have to be an stand I can't. Anyway, so yes, I got very excited sitting there listening to all the talk about ice, because, well, as Gina knows, we skated together. Anyway, I'm Ellie Malkowitz, 187 Liston. I have 3 daughters in the district. My oldest just graduated last June, and part of the reason I'm here is to say thank you. She had a great experience. I see some of her teachers and coaches here, and she's a freshman at UB in the Farm D program. So she got a good start, and she was very prepared. And then I have a 9th grader who's taking advantage of music, sports, and is in honors classes, and she's very happy. And then my youngest just started at Hoover Middle, and she's very happy there too. But I do want to implore the board to continue exploring research-based reading curriculum for our youngest learners. American reading, I have now coined the death of an American reader. It's not a balanced literacy program. My youngest daughter, coming up into middle school, is lacking knowledge of literature. She doesn't know what rising action is. She doesn't know what character analysis is. She doesn't know what theme is. She hasn't done author studies. These are things that are missing from that American reading program, and I'm still on my podium about it. Our graduation rates, we want to have great graduation rates. That begins with our 4 to 8-year-old children. They need an excellent foundation. If you want better writers, if you want kids to perform better on writing assessments and SATs, they need to be good readers. They need to be thoughtful readers. And when children are reading in American reading, they are reading by themselves, they're isolated, and they are not having the conversations they need to be having about literature with an adult who is a reader and can model excellent reading conversations with them. So I hope that you implore and encourage your administrators to continue researching and looking into better balanced literacy programs to prepare those children for what you want. Because it starts down in, we're not just coloring with them in 2nd grade and kindergarten. We're doing a lot of reading and a lot of prep. And then another topic that I kind of, it digresses a little bit from the reading, is the iReady tests. My daughter is a 5th grader at Hoover Middle, and the first full week of school, she's coming home and she's feeling nervous, she's feeling worried, and she's feeling discouraged because she doesn't understand why she's taking these tests. As a parent, I've received 0 communication from the school. What are the tests for? Why are they taking them? What are they being used for? I did tell her I know a little bit about standardized testing because I'm a teacher myself. I told her it's not going on your report card, so do the best you can. Mom, there's stuff on there I don't even know what it is. So why are we wasting instructional time on these tests? Unless you can send me something as a parent, and I know the reason and the purpose is a good reason and purpose for taking them. And then very quickly, since we're talking about shared facilities and pooling our money, how about a new bridge to cross Sheridan? playground unless we drive our kids. Because even when they're 12 and 13, they're not going to cross independently 8 lanes of traffic. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public comments portion of our meeting.
Jill, I was wondering if I could make a motion for a brief recess.
Sure. 5-minute recess.
Allie.
Okay. The district clerk just made me aware that there were 2 people that wanted to be able to speak this evening that didn't get a chance to sign in. And so I'll invite those individuals up one at a time and ask them to sign in on this sheet and then step to the microphone for their time to begin. We have David, I'm sorry, I can't, what is it? Deneau, David Deneau. Mr. Deneau, if you wouldn't mind signing in for us, please. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yep.
My name is David Deneau, and I live at 135 Irving Terrace. Thank you for allowing me.
Of course.
Inadvertently signed the wrong sheet.
No problem.
The reason I'm up here is to discuss the new bus loops that we recently have done over the construction project over the last couple of years, and particularly the one at Lindbergh School. I'm a longtime resident of Lindbergh, Irving Terrace, that is. My son went to Lindbergh, went on to middle, graduated from Kenmore-West. So I'm very familiar with the school system. I've lived on Irving Terrace for over 40 years. 15 of my neighbors have been there in excess of 40 years. One of them is the original owner of their house from the 1930s. So it's a very stable and long tenured neighborhood. We're very proud of this neighborhood. Some changes took place that didn't sit well with the residents. I'd like to address with the school board and everyone that we would appreciate a little more community, if you will, involvement or appreciation for your immediate neighbors, not just around Lindbergh School, but around all your schools, because I think the immediate neighborhoods have been ignored. One thing I would like to distribute, I've got a packet of pictures for each board member. If I may, Gina, if I may give them to you. These pictures are pictures of the bus loops at Kenmore-West, Hoover, Franklin. What they show is the bus loops and the signage. Okay? Buses only, no cars allowed, etc., etc. I have another set of pictures that show Lindbergh's. Lindbergh's signage clearly allows parking in the bus loop. Personally, I don't think that's a good idea on Lindbergh. Ever since this, we ended up with a bus loop that actually was more like a parking lot. And since day one, we've had issues. Canisius High School tailgates with their cars for St. Joe's football games. There's been other issues going on. The lighting wasn't going off until 2 o'clock in the morning, shining on the immediate residences across the street. Each and every one of you, picture your home if someone's parked across the street shining a spotlight on your house till 2 o'clock in the morning. You wouldn't appreciate it. And it took numerous, and it wasn't just an easy way to get the matter resolved. It is now resolved that they go off at a reasonable hour. The last pictures I showed you, allowing the parking, I want to know why Lindbergh is the only school in your entire system that allows cars to park in the bus loop. And I think from a safety standpoint, it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Mr. Deneau, before you go away, would you mind just giving us our phone number so that we can have somebody contact you and follow up with a conversation, or superintendent, if you wouldn't mind just writing it on this slip so we can have a conversation. I know these meetings aren't generally two-way.
I'll be happy to do that. I have had meetings, I have emails from over 2 years ago. I was given assurances by previous people in decision-making capacities, addressing each and every one of my concerns for myself, not only myself, but our neighbors. Some of those people are still here, some are gone. Those assurances have gone on deaf ears and have not been followed through with. But I'd be more than happy, I'll meet with anybody, I'll be happy to give you my phone number.
Sure, by bringing it to our attention, what that allows the board to do is we can get follow-up, we can ask what the concerns were, a summary of the concerns, and follow up with where we're at with fixing that. So, sure, right there's mine. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to pass that on to our superintendent. Thank you. Okay, oh, I'm sorry, the second name before I give this away. Mike Giambardo. I'm sorry. Sir, if you wouldn't mind just coming on up and writing your name. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. We're pretty laid back here, so. Okay, thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Michael Giambardo. I live at 111 Irving Terrace. Before I begin, I'd like to compliment the superintendent and Mr. Picado on a fine job they're doing in the school district. I've been here 55 years, and in the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen, at least 2 years, I've seen a vast improvement in the morale of the children and of the teachers, by the way. The reason I'm here is that at Lindbergh School, Mr. Deneau just mentioned to you, he showed you a picture of a sign, a bus stating that cars can park at certain hours in the bus stop, drop off, and pick up. We didn't have that last year. Now I understand the security reasons, you want this one-door policy and all the rest. I'm here to say I think that was a wrong move. Because when you have cars parked different ways, different angles, and you have a fire, you're not going to get any fire trucks in there. You're not going to get trucks close enough to present or place their aerial apparatuses near the building. I think it's a mistake. I think it was an honest mistake that sign was put up and now people can park there. Now there are other reasons that I fear could be very hazardous. I have placed them in folders for each of the board members and the 2 superintendents, and I know my time is short, and if the clerk could distribute these, or if I could distribute these, I think that's one way of communicating with you, and the board could look this over if they wish and make certain decisions. May I distribute these, Madam President?
Of course, sure. Thank you, sir.
I have 18 seconds. This is, it's, I'm not saying it's a criticism, it's something that I see that is occurring there that I think could be a hazard, a safety hazard. And I would be willing with the safety board or whatever you have created for this different schools for some community input. If not, you have a choice. You could read the documents over and make up your minds as what you want to do. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. This evening now we are on to item 8A, NISBA Convention, Proposed Bylaws, Amendments and Resolutions. Just need a moment to pull up these numbers. This was an unusual year in that we did not have any board members that chose to want to discuss any of the same resolutions. So, to expedite this, we'll just go through one at a time, and I won't read the whole resolution. This information has been provided to the board, and I'll invite the person who wanted to comment on this to just make whatever comments they would like to make. And I presume that if no comments were made, the rest of these are just considered to be yes votes. So resolution number 1 regarding unfunded and underfunded mandates. Michelle, you had comment on this?
It's just something that I thought we should discuss. Obviously, it's a topic. The state's handing down to school district mandates and not providing enough funding to be able to implement. And it creates instances in our district where we're having to shift funds around to comply. And many of these mandates, I think that they're beneficial. I'd just like to see some more funding for them.
Okay. So you are not, your issue with this then is opposes any legislative regulatory mandates that would impose new unfunded or underfunded mandates that doesn't qualify their usefulness?
No, I was in support of the resolution because it's opposing any underfunded mandates.
Okay,
so
sure.
I was in support of the resolution.
Yep, I am as well. Definitely, and it looks like everybody else is nodding their head. Okay, very good. Resolution number 3, school safety and reducing access to guns. Tom actually had a proposal to possibly amend this. So, Tom, would you like to talk about your? I have it here, but I'll go ahead and let you.
Okay, thank you. Yep, the resolution is very brief, number 3, that NISBA supports legislation to improve school safety by reducing access to guns. And I thought it might be forceful for the State School Boards Association and for us as an individual board to suggest an amendment to read something like resolved that NISBA opposes attempts by the U.S. Department of Education to use federal funds for the purpose of arming teachers.
So for the delegates that have gone, has anybody here gone? Chris, did you didn't go? And I don't remember last year. I can't remember who went. Is there is time for this sort of change? And I know there's some instructions in the back here. Let me just. So if you can amend a resolution. Oh, just like anything else, they follow Robert's Rules of Order. So you can call for a resolution. I personally have no, I almost put this one because I just thought that the resolution was pretty vague, even with the explanation of the Resolutions Committee, and it barely passed. It was a 6-5 vote. And I think because of that ambiguity there, that they're not exactly spelling out what that school safety and reduction of access to guns would actually look like. So just to be clear, what Tom is recommending is that we would suggest an amendment to this resolution that would read, resolved that the New York State School Boards Association opposes attempts by the U.S. Department of Education to use federal funding for the purpose of arming teachers. So a slightly different turn on that. What are the board's thoughts?
I mean, I like the intent of what Tom's putting out there. I'm trying to think of how you mesh that with what's already here. Because I think you're suggesting we amend this so it would actually be sort of a double resolution. So it would be this plus that. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's definitely related. I'm just trying to think of how we justify fitting those together.
That could almost be strong enough to be its own resolution.
Oh, I think it could be.
Separate resolution.
I think so. Maybe we should
But it's the
explore.
only one, pardon me, of the 20 or so that had anything to do with, you know, firearms or weapons.
Would you like to craft one that we could send out to the board? I know we don't have a regular board meeting, but we could certainly read it in our October meeting. The deadline is September 21st, but it could come to the board. 20th? Do you feel that you could write something that you'd like us to consider and send that out through email? Amendments and rebuttals. Okay, it just says amendments by 5 o'clock, September 21st.
Well, I could tweak it a little bit, but I think it could stand as I wrote it as an amendment, as a separate
It
resolution.
does, I'm reading now, it says no additional bylaw amendments can be proposed at this time. But you can propose an amendment to a resolution that's already printed in the report.
Yeah.
Right, so
That's
we could,
right.
so it would just sort of be resolved blah, 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 and be it resolved blah, 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 and it would just be the two pieces together that
I'm
we propose.
fine with that
I'm
language.
fine with that
if-
too.
Yep. Michelle, you will be our voting delegate. You're okay? We'll type it up and make sure that it's clear. Are you okay?
Right now, it's just a proposal, and it's just been rumors that have been published widely that the state education, that the federal Department of Education is considering that, you know, using federal funds to help support the arming of teachers. But I would like to, you know, address this proactively
Sure.
and
I'm
toss
fine.
it out there for
I'm
our
fine with
consideration, I should say.
And I'm sorry, Andrew, you'll be our delegate.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, perfect. One that wasn't on the list, but I just want to make a point of this, resolution number 4, Andrew. This one was about adopting an earlier, oh, it was on the list, and this was mine, adopting an earlier start date to the instructional year with those dates being eligible for state aid. I guess my question would be if there's proposing that we start in August, I'm not opposed to it, but what about programs like BOCES and other things that already have set schedules? That would be a question. Otherwise, I'm not exactly sure why NIS was getting involved in that, but. Okay, the next was resolution number 10. And this was Michelle's. This is asking the New York State School Board to support legislation to exempt expenditures related to school safety from the tax cap.
I don't recall. That might have been an error. That's not.
That wasn't yours? Okay.
No, if it was, well,
It might have been.
it might have been my error.
Okay, I went through and just wrote everyone's names.
And
Okay.
and actually, the proposals that I sent to you, I really didn't, if people wanted to discuss them, I was in support of them.
Oh,
It wasn't
okay.
that I had an issue with anything that I had sent to you, so.
Okay.
If there are any others.
So resolution 11, then the federal funding dedicated for school safety programs, you're in favor of it? You
Oh,
just
absolutely, yes.
Okay, yes. And 12 was establishing additional funding for student health and mental health services. I think all of us are clearly
Yes.
dedicated to that. Okay, very good. Then we have for proposition 15. Chris, this was yours. This was New York State School Boards want to pursue an amendment to penal law that would criminalize falsely threatening use of a gun or making threats of mass violence on public school property. And their rationale for this is that already exists for people who make bomb threats, and they want to expand that language.
Yeah, so I guess I'm not really in favor of this, despite how serious these issues are. And this already is treated as a misdemeanor. So what they're looking to do here is have it be bumped up to a felony. And I guess I feel that, well, I mean, you guys know I always tend to err on the side of being less punitive. And especially in light of newly enacted laws in New York State for Raise the Age, where, I mean, not that this only would apply to students or young people, but now that the state is really taking a look at how we deal with kids who get in trouble, and you know, there's going to be this shift where instead of going to criminal court, it's going to be handled through family court. So I was just opposed to this. It's already treated as a misdemeanor. I didn't agree that it should be kind of bumped up to a felony.
Is this, because I'm reading the rationale here, it sounds like this doesn't just apply to students, though. This would be...
It doesn't.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't say, so it would apply to anyone. And it's, you know, this deals with, specifically with, like, a false report.
Right.
So it's not, it doesn't deal with actual act of
someone
violence.
who showed intent.
Right.
Right. I mean, and I guess for a 12-year-old, I tend to think the way that you do, but for a 38-year-old, I tend to think maybe it would be appropriate to have a higher level of consequences. But there's not really the flexibility in here to differentiate.
Really, right.
I guess what I would say is I'll put a note down here, and I can definitely bring that up when this comes to discussion at the annual meeting, and just point out what you brought up there, because I think that's a reasonable concern. I could even be prepared with I don't know. We have to, amendments have to be submitted ahead of time. You can't submit an amendment on the floor.
By the 21st.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just, you know, it stuck out, and I just wanted to comment about it, so let my feelings be known. I guess ultimately, you know, what happens, it's not like I have a strong feeling that we should, you know, really change it, but I don't really agree with it.
Well, and it's not like we don't take these things seriously. You know, when something is reported, I mean, there's generally police involvement, school involvement. It's not like this isn't looked into. So, what is the feeling of the board then? Should this be a yes vote or a no vote, or just wait and see how the conversation goes? I personally trust Andrew's judgment to see, so I'm open to whatever the rest of the board says.
Yeah, and I do too.
I just want to point out the last sentence in here, and this is something that's always kind of confusing about these things, because some of them, it's unclear if they're new or not. This one says, reauthorizing this position would direct NISBA or statewide blah, blah, blah to work on this issue. So I'm wondering why this is a reauthorization, as in this is an existing position?
It didn't indicate that it was sunsetting.
Right, because I assume the ones that say sunset must mean they're put there as a position and they'll expire at some point, and then we're reauthorizing them.
That might be a good question to ask, because it looks like it was submitted this year on July 13th.
The submit date is this year, and it's from a BOCES group. So, okay, well, I will certainly bring that up for discussion.
Okay, very good. Let's see here, and then we had resolution number 19. Michelle, this was also yours. This was disproportionality in education workforce. Again, is this just one you supported and just wanted to? This was training on cultural competency. Okay. I support a yes vote on that as well. Everybody else okay with that? All right. This is 19. This was the, all school board members complete at least one required training session on cultural competency, inclusive of but not limiting to examining and strategizing about formulating intentional actions to address disproportionality in the education workforce and student outcomes as it relates to diverse backgrounds.
And this is one that the resolutions committee did not recommend.
Right, but
Yeah, I'm fully supportive of it as well.
I just think with the changing, and I could see why some districts wouldn't support it, but I'm okay with a yes vote here, so. Everybody else seems to be in agreement, okay. And then Chris, also one not recommended for adoption. Maybe it would be helpful for Andrew to know your thoughts on resolution number 20. New York State School Board Association supports legislation changing the date a student is eligible to attend kindergarten to September 1st of the school year. The student turns 5, with the option for the superintendent waiver if the student will be 5 before the, I'm sorry to laugh, I just don't know why NISBA is, again, this is one of their things, but what were your thoughts?
Okay, so I don't agree with this resolution either, so I guess I was just curious what other people thought, if they supported the resolution or if they agreed with the resolutions committee.
Andrew, you wouldn't mind bringing that information back to us to see? And what I'm mostly interested in is if anybody actually uses any like data, actual, you know, to support their claim.
Sure, and honestly, I'd like to see a resolution on the other side of this, now that I think about it, about providing the opportunity for students to enroll in universal pre-K the year after they're eligible if their parents decide not to enroll them that first year, because that's something that, if I understand correctly, they can't currently do. So I know that actually with both of my children, their birthdays were so close to the cutoff, we decided to wait a year, but then they were not eligible for universal pre-K. So.
That's absolutely true. We had 2 students that ran into that were registered for UPK, and it was an error on our part, and they were 5, and that should be maybe something we could consider next year.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I would like to see more flexibility, I think, and you know, more discretion on the part of the parents to decide when their kids start school.
Right, because there's no, it's just a date, right? So there's no subjective input at all. You don't meet with a team to like look at the child or anything like that.
No, it's purely arbitrary, and any date you come up with will be, and you're always going to have kids on either side of the date that should have gone or should have waited. So honestly, I think all school districts can adopt an earlier date, but not a later date, and I guess I don't know why you would. I mean, I think just adhering to the state's date for the cutoff, I think, is really the best way to go.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to that update when you return. And I think that was it. So we're okay with our delegates voting on all this. I'm sorry, Tom. Because I had it written on the back. I apologize. I had it written out. Again, sorry about that. Tom wanted to propose, and again now in looking at this, I'm not sure that we might be able to add this since it doesn't appear that they're accepting new, but I'd be open to considering this as a Kenton resolution but I'll let you go ahead and read your thoughts.
Okay. Actually, I'm looking at the sheet here, and on page 24, I had highlighted this. It says that a member of school board may propose a late resolution.
Now, in the beginning, it says that you cannot. Hold on a second.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
On page 24, it says no additional bylaw amendments can be...
Those are bylaws.
Oh, bylaws, yeah. And then resolutions had to be submitted by July 16th. Well, go ahead. Let's put it as a matter of record.
Okay, yeah, it's the second paragraph, that a member of school board may propose a late resolution.
Okay.
But, yeah, I was thinking about this after last month's board meeting where we had a presentation about ESSA and information about the 95% participation rate in the state assessments. And then I read something that the County School Boards Association shared with us that I think was like a summary of the meeting that some of you went to when Commissioner Elia spoke, who also apparently reinforced the 95% participation rate. And according to the summary that was in the ECASB newsletter, the commissioner said that school districts need to get on board. So that, coupled with a very recent report that was published by the Benjamin Center at SUNY New Paltz just this summer, that looked very carefully at state assessments, starting I think in 2013, mostly through 2016. But it was a rather scathing report about the state assessments and kind of a vindication of the opt-out movement. So, and I was frustrated last spring after attending the Next Generations conference in Rochester about the last session, which was turned out to be, in the end, a Q&A with state ed officials in the ELA division. We weren't getting answers really to the design of the test, and I followed that up with some emails and didn't get anywhere either. So I'm just proposing that we consider a late resolution that would read something like this, that NYSBA urges the New York State Education Department to improve the ELA and math assessments, specifically that more teachers participate in the design, not merely the review of the test questions, before exerting pressure on districts to reduce opt-outs.
I'm completely in favor of that. Everybody else?
Definitely in favor of that.
Okay. So what I'll do is, Tom had actually sent this to me typed up. I'll be happy to forward it to you and CC you if you wouldn't mind bringing that up. And in the meantime, maybe just review these procedures here, because when I had eyeballed that, it looks like you couldn't submit anything afterwards, so that's good. Okay, and thank you for your thoughts on that, Tom. Appreciate it. Okay, board reports. I do not believe that we have we had any committee meetings yet? Oh, you have, Michelle?
Yes, Andrew and I both attended the delegates committee for ECASB last Thursday.
Oh, yes.
There was a lot of committee appointments. We learned that the trial membership for several of the Niagara County schools are going to continue for another year. October 11th at the protocol is the legislative roundtable. They mentioned that they've only invited the senators this year, though. I was a little disappointed, backing off of Tom's thoughts on ESSA. At the end, when we're allowed to go around and kind of give an update on the district, I floated the idea of speaking with the districts about what their thoughts are on that and testing. And there wasn't a lot of reply, except for a couple who reiterated how well the tests have been improved, and that we really need to get on board. So I was a little bit disappointed with that from the delegates committee. One from Cheektowaga Central, and then the fearless leader of our committee. What was his name?
Interesting. Well,
so I was a little bit disappointed, and I admittedly I had to run out, so I wasn't able to really follow up and speak with anybody about that. I did interact with Andrew a little bit about the tone of that particular committee, so I learned a little bit.
That makes me think that they don't understand what the implications are, that they're talking about all of those subgroups meeting, especially in those small rural districts, but maybe they're not concerned about it. Well, there may be some room for discussion on that. I mean, there's going to be some other forums coming up, and even I can tell you from an executive board perspective, we also had a meeting and we went over member surveys, and I was really surprised to find out that charter school information was not really top among, and I have to believe that it's because districts aren't being affected by them to the extent that we are, and the districts who are definitely on board with this. So just interesting. I guess you probably got to get out and see the world a little bit, and maybe we need to do a better job of explaining as school board members to other school board members through ECASB, this is why we're concerned. So might think of a forum to do that. Okay, any other board reports? All right, we have not had no staff development, no audit committee, serve on those with Tom, so I think we're okay with that. Move on to our policy subcommittee, and you were sent a first read on a few policies, pardon me, the word was escaping me, and I just want to pull those up. They just need some clarification in some areas. Sorry, Julianne, I'm trying to lean into my mic here. Oh. Okay, and then there was one additional that, in speaking with one of our student reps, who we'll introduce in just a little bit here, that we might want to discuss as well. But we'll walk through this list, and hopefully we can just get this moving along pretty quickly. Policy 1350, these are principles for conduct for school board members, and I believe Andrew was the one who flagged this one, wondering if these are in line with the code of conduct that we adopted, and you were going to reconcile this and send it out with the addendum.
Which I did not do. I will say I did go through and do the reconciliation, and I forgot that I said I was going to send it out, and then I forgot to bring it with me. But I'll say these are not out of alignment, but we could probably do more to sort of put them in better in alignment with each other. So like I don't see anything that's contradictory. I think it probably it was mostly a question of whether we want to include a little bit more detail in the policy. But I kind of tend to think not. Like I think that the policy is at a reasonable level for policy, and that our code of conduct that we adopted is probably reasonable. But let me go back and we can.
Okay, well we'll pull that off then.
Yep.
For a first read. We could do a first read next month on that.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Policy 1510, the subject is regular board meetings and rules, quorum, and parliamentary procedure. It says the board may invite visitors to participate in its discussion of matters on the agenda. And Gina, you had read this a different way, though. You felt as though that meant just the public can have comment during public session, or we invite people to ask, we can ask questions. I'm fine with leaving it that way as long as it's understood, because we do say that it's not a two-way dialogue later on, so maybe we don't need to change that one.
Yep, I think that's fine.
Policy 1511, public expression at board meetings. So one of the questions that we need to consider is that it says any resident or employee of the district. I know that was changed a while back, and I believe that, I'm just being honest, I believe that was not changed by our board. I believe that was meant to bar who could come and speak at the meetings, which this board has never done. We've been receptive to anybody. So I'd like to amend that and really just change it to any recognized speaker by the Board of Education, because I remember even Steve Ash coming to talk about the Jerry Star Sleep Out. I mean, he's not a resident, but bringing something forward to the board. So if it's amenable to change that language, then it would read any recognized speaker who places his or her name, address, and topic on the sign-in sheet. Okay, and then item B under that same policy is the speaker should be recognized, but the tag on that is to speak to an item on the agenda, which we also do not restrict. Clearly tonight, the Lindbergh bus loop would not have been an issue we would have heard about publicly if we were sticking only to agenda items. So I would like to remove that maybe and say something, speak to a matter of concern to the Board of Education, something that's relevant. And I would use discretion there too, as sometimes there's things that people bring forward to us that need turn back to the chain of command, but we would just use our discretion then. So if it's amenable to the board, we'll make that change. Any comments on either of those changes? Okay. I'm trying to go through this. Subject, the policy 1620 annual organizational meeting. This is actually part of state law, and state law reads that it should be held on the first Tuesday of July of each year, unless that day is a legal holiday, in which it shall be held on the first Wednesday. But it also gives a pass if we were to have a resolution in place that it would happen sometime between the first 15 days. In speaking with the district clerk, she does not believe we have that resolution in place. So that might just be one we construct. We work with Mr. Bavino to see, who's going to be out with vacation days and things like that. That is travel time for a lot of families. So it may not happen on that first Tuesday or Wednesday.
I was kind of unclear from reading this, though. Does this mean we have a standing resolution to say that we can do this, or annually we have to pass a resolution to set the date if it's not going to be the date prescribed?
We can have Gina check on that and then get back to us, but we can prepare that resolution ahead of time, and then if that becomes something that needs annual approval, we'll just add it to the reorg meeting for each year, I would think.
Well, it would have to be before the reorg meeting.
No, but it would be inclusive of the following year, or in the June board meeting. Perfect. Great. So we'll hold off on the wording of that. 1620 we're going to shelve until next meeting. And policy 1630 and 1650 were really questions we had for Gina. And Andrew, these you brought up, but in advance, I had let her know we were going to ask. So Gina, I don't know if you'd like to just speak to those resolutions. I don't know if you have them in front of you or not. Okay.
I guess so for 1630, I was just curious about, the part about personal registration of voters. Is that just saying that people who are not otherwise registered to vote can come to the district to register to vote specifically for district elections? Is that what that means?
We do hold 2 of those days, the 2 weeks prior to the annual budget vote. And they have to be a minimum of 4 hours, and we hold them on different days of the week, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. We're from 2 to 6, 8 to 12, and then 2 to 6. I have been looking into, we are a personal registration district, and we do have to make some adjustments. I've been looking into how to structure it better to follow how it really should be. So we are doing some things we need to update a little bit, but I'm working on that. But we do, that is where people can come, but all the years that I've been here, we've had one person come in and register to vote.
Is that something you think you'd have ready for October, or do you need longer? Because I'll pull it from the consent.
I'm going to work on it tomorrow at the conference again, and then try to reach our council when I get back.
Well, I'll just pull it tonight then.
Well, I'm wondering, Gina, are you saying that we might need to make changes to the policy, or are you saying you might need to make changes to our practices to be better in line with the policy and state law, and there's no changes required?
Right, yeah, I don't think the policy needs to be changed. I reviewed it, just how we carry out the policy. We need to firm that up a little bit.
Okay, and 1650 was submission of questions and propositions at the annual meeting and election and special district meetings.
And for this one, I just wanted clarification. According to the language of this, and I'm assuming this is just reiteration of state law, but it sounds like anybody could submit a proposition for the ballot. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Our policy, you dictate policy, and in policy how many signatures are needed. And our policy states 25 or 5% of the people voting in the previous election, whichever is greater.
So it's equivalent to getting on the ballot as a board member.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are certain things that the board can refuse to place on the ballot. There's several instances where you can say, no, that's not appropriate, but you don't have unfettered discretion to refuse a proposition. You can alter the language. And again, you can dictate, but through policy how many signatures are needed, but yes, anybody can bring something before the voters.
Okay, then, so for then item 8C, we're going to need a motion to approve this with the agreement that we will have the first read for policy 1350 and 1620 next month, so they will be pulled off this first read. I have a motion to approve that amended motion.
Second?
Okay, Michelle, second by Andrew. Any discussion? Other discussion? I should have moved that before we discussed. Oh well, it's getting late. All those in favor still signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, very briefly, move through this pretty quickly on our end. We have here a recommendation from NYSBA to support the BOCES district cap increase. There's currently legislation that really restricts our BOCES superintendent salaries, and I constructed this letter, didn't modify it too much from what NYSBA had sent out as a recommendation, but I thought this was in line with what we had discussed with becoming a little more active, and I do believe that Dr. Fusco is an excellent district superintendent, and it's hard to keep quality people if you're not willing to pay them. So any opposition to me signing this and sending it? Okay. Very good. And regular board comments. Any regular board comments? All right. Then this evening we have 2 new student reps. How exciting. Wow. You guys, your first meeting, it's a long one. They're usually not like this, but we figured if you can make it through this first one without falling asleep or being on your phone, then you're in good standing. But we do have McKinley Falkowski. He's our representative from East, and alternate Laura DiAquino from Kenmore-West. And we are going to be hearing, so we're in the process, this will evolve, but we do want to hear the voice of students. It is the job of the board to consider policy. We like to check in from time to time about some things you're seeing and things you'd like to bring before the board. So McKinley, you have anything for us tonight?
I do. I have a oral portion. Thank you. I have a written portion of my report, which has been included in the agenda for tonight's meeting, and I have an oral report.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So my name is McKinley Falkowski, as you may know, and I'm honored to be sitting up here and to be a member of the Kenton School Board. I hope you all had a chance to review my written portion of my report, which was in today's agenda for the meeting. If you haven't, I have copies right here for you. This being the first report of my tenure, I need to go over how we collected data for my report and how it was created. My first point has to deal with the creation of questions for my survey, which was distributed to students in the district. The questions were designed to emulate questionnaires distributed to students in the mid-1980s, back when each Kenton school had an advisory board. And these surveys allowed students to come up with solutions to their schools and offer insight on how the school was functioning. Additional questions such as who the superintendent and who the board president are were created due to the belief that there was a communication issue within Kenton, something which is emphasized in this report. For my point with the collection of data, as all of you are probably aware, the world and global economy is moving towards a mobile and cloud-centered one, which means education and governance strategies needs to follow in lockstep. A plurality of data collected in the survey has been done using Google Forms, which was then sent to all high school students in the district over their email accounts. Obviously, not all students check their email, so we had to accommodate to their habits. In multiple lunch periods at both Kenmore East and West, students received a printout of the Google form, we collected it, and then inserted it into Google Sheets, where all of our data is saved. In the future, to represent the plurality of students, we will continue the process of utilizing email and print out copies of the survey. Additionally, we'll be expanding our operation of collecting data to middle schools. Multiple teachers have already agreed to multiple teachers have already agreed to work with us on this, and we'll be using their classrooms to survey students. The strategies used in this report are utilizing 21st century technology and paper will ensure that we provide the best support or the best feedback possible. For my third point, as all of you are aware, solutions are not easy to create, especially in the world of education. The recommendations that we propose are ones that have been created by Laura and I. They do not need to be followed, but from the perspective of students, they are critical to ensure that we achieve our mission by providing our students with the support, tools, and diverse opportunities needed to meet the challenges of an ever-changing world. Additionally, there is a belief by some that education is pyramidal, with administrators on top, teachers in the middle, and students on the bottom. In recent years, with the greater influx of technology into our schools, education has become more triangular than ever, where students work with teachers, teachers work with administrators, and administrators work with students. The results of the survey show that the students working with administrators portion is lacking. Like most problems in the workplace, the issue comes down to communication. Kentown already has the infrastructure to support an administrative-student relationship. We have student congress in high schools, this board position is here, as well as an array of other activities that support that narrative. When students don't know who the superintendent or board president is, it does not mean that they have failed at their job. It just means that we need to work on our communication. This could be as simple as sending an email out to all high school students in the district, or it could be as complex as sitting down in the lunchroom and talking to students. Students in the district want to get involved. We just need to know how. I thank you all for this opportunity to speak, and I cannot wait to see what we accomplish together.
Well, that's very interesting, and I do appreciate you saying that it's not to impugn my work as board president. Actually, I would tell you that probably most employees wouldn't know who I am. And on an interesting note of that, when I first joined the board, when I used to sit in the meetings, it used to be only 2 people that served on our building visitation committee. And they would do a tour through the school, and then they would report back what they saw in the school. And one of the first things that I did as board president was made sure that those visits were open to everybody, and that they happened, we were going every month. So it wasn't just, oh, well, every 3 years we could go in. Every month we were going in there, and we do walk around. Admittedly, we don't go as much into the classrooms. We probably only visit 1 or 2 because we don't want to interrupt that first instruction. Having said that, I do think there are other ways that we probably could be more integrated. I know all of the board members attend sporting events and arts and other things, but if there's specific feedback that you think might be useful, and we do send out, do the students, students get the schoolgram sent to their emails or no? That might be one quick way, because we do actually,
Students do not receive the schoolgram email over their email accounts. They need to sign up on the website to receive that.
well, we could make, that's one easy change that we could make, because that shares information from all the schools. It generally has information from Mr. Bavino and myself. We might have a little blurb in there. So that's a simple fix, I would think. Juliana, is that a simple fix? Before I say that it is. She's like, well, we can explore that. I think that might be an excellent start. And you know what I'd love to see, though, is an evaluation repeated again at the end of your term to see if that number goes up, right? Because we want to see if we've had any growth in that area.
Well, as you see in the survey that was provided to you all, we will hopefully be continuing this process of distributing surveys every month, and that is actually one of the questions we hope to continue to hopefully see progress as Laura and I will be going to more schools, talking to students. We hope to relay that information on to students.
Okay, very good. Anything else for Kinley?
No, but if you just need an extra copy of this, I have them right here for you.
Okay, and that is on part of our public docket for everybody to review as well. So if anybody's interested in seeing that information, it is out there. And Laura, how about you? Honey, you have anything to share?
So McKinley and I did a combined report. All of the results for our survey were gathered from both of our high schools. I really encourage everybody to look through the packet. It's long, but the results are really interesting. The questions were very well thought out. We put a lot of thought into them, and I feel like they really got some interesting responses and interesting answers. At the end of the report, there was room for students to submit any additional comments they had, suggestions. And I feel like they really draw attention to really important points. McKinley and I both feel passionately about communication, and we think that getting feedback from students, staff, and teachers alike is really the best way to accurately represent the needs and wants and thoughts about everything from everybody. So we're hoping to do more of these surveys, as McKinley said. We think it's a great way for students to really express themselves and to gather information. So we're looking forward to a successful year.
Great. And one other policy, in speaking with McKinley, and we didn't have this as part of our docket, so it would be maybe up for consideration for first read next month, even though we are moving to the 2000s. Our policy for the student reps states specifically high school. I wanted to maybe just ask the board their thoughts on including middle school. I feel like our middle school students, and again, keep in mind, they're not sending them on their own. All of these are vetted through Superintendent Bavino and the building principals. So maybe something, might have to be shifted, that you might ask high school students versus middle school students. I'm personally okay with that, but I don't know if the rest of the board has any comments on that.
Being the parent of a middle schooler, a brand new middle schooler, I can attest that I'm sure they have plenty to say, and they would love to be a part of the survey. So I would agree with you, Jill.
Right, I'm looking at that, like even the question about IB, or maybe their feedback on, it's Link Crew at the high school web, and they might have different responses if it's a student-driven survey. You don't know.
They probably also want air conditioning too.
My son jinxed me. He asked me if I've ever had a fire drill out in the blazing hot sun, and then asked me if I had one in the rain, and we had one yesterday in the rain, or 2 days ago, whatever that was. Yesterday, yeah.
I just wanted to say I think this is great, and I'm looking forward to sort of an ongoing thing. I'd like to just make a suggestion that when you're asking these questions, think about doing like a 5-point Likert scale. So you're sort of saying this is a statement, and I strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree, just because I feel like that would add a little bit more nuance to the answers and the questions. But I like where you're going with this. It looks great.
Tom?
I would just like to thank you both for designing the questionnaire and conducting it.
Yeah, great work. I thought you were going to make the comment about the Likert scale.
Oh, I concur.
Yes, very good. I know that was time consuming, and especially at a busy time for both of you, but this would be great. And your work will help evolve this position into something that will be really, it will mean something for students, I think. Okay, Mr. Bovino, district update?
Okay. I also would like to thank Lauren McKinley. We'll be reviewing the results, and we'll be meeting, and we'll see where we can make some progress. I'd like to thank the staff for a real smooth opening. It's been one of the smoothest openings we've had in recent years. The assistant superintendents and I were in the buildings mostly last week. The facilities were in pretty good shape. As teachers and students seemed ready to go. We did have a couple of those very hot days, and I want to thank B&G and food service in particular. We had a request to provide some relief at the elementary school level, so B&G got some fans in there, and our food service got some extra water, so kudos to them. As always, there's always some complaints that come through, and we continue to focus on this customer service model. And I want to certainly recognize Gina, because I sit very close to her, and I can hear when we get a few of these calls, which we get, she's making sure that when calls come in, these people are heard, and they're directed to somebody who can make a decision. And that's something we're emphasizing at every level of the organization. And I know some days we fall short, but I think our leaders know that customer service is something that we're going to continue to make a point. So thank you, Gina, and good opening. Thank you, staff. Just a quick update on one of our strategic intents, our trauma-informed care. All schools at this point have championship teams that provide on-site support. Many of our staff have received the Trauma 101 course that was developed by UV's Institute on Trauma and Trauma-Informed Care. All school champions have received this training, as well as at this point 200 support staff. And we expect to have everybody trained by January of 2019. Security update, we expect the installation of the bullet-resistant film to start October 1. As we toured the buildings, we also were checking out the phase 1 of our single point of entry. We have some fine-tuning to do. Just to remind the board that some buildings that require construction, we're waiting for state approval. There are several buildings where the construction is rather complex to get what we need, and that's going to be put off to the next capital project. And we are also now putting together a plan to introduce the Raptor system into our current setup. Just like to comment on our Assistant Superintendent for Instruction and Student Services, Kelly White, has sort of jumped in with both feet. Heavy workload these first couple of weeks. She's been at the buildings, been in numerous meetings, and she's been a great addition to our team. And we also discovered in these last 2 weeks she has a wonderful sense of humor, which keeps us on our feet, which is very important in this line of work. Tonight on the docket for board approval, we have a couple of appointments, and those folks are here. I'd like to recognize them tonight. We're recommending Mike Muscarella for the interim director of elementary ed. Mike has been a teacher in the district, program supervisor, and a principal at Lindbergh for 10 years. Ann Macagnato has been a veteran teacher. She's also a specialist in gifted and talented. The last 2 years, she has been a school support specialist at Lindbergh. She will be the interim principal. And Deb Peters, a veteran teacher, will become the teacher on special assignment, the school support specialist. So if you folks could just stand up so we could put a face to you. Congratulations. Mike assures us that Lindbergh is in very good hands. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent White for her report.
So you'll see in the executive summary tonight, I will be reporting on the summer programs. You also see in the consensus agenda a couple of overnight field trips. Those are historical field trips. Those kind of are renewal requests. We also have a few contracts, all of which are again renewals, with the exception of the one Youth Truth, which is a company that will help us develop surveys as part of the Kenton Forward strategic planning process. And those were vetted through the Social Emotional Task Force. So that is a new contract. The rest are renewals. So just want to thank you tonight for the opportunity to kind of highlight some of the summer programs. First, we'll start off with saying that this year we received feedback that this was perhaps the most successful summer program in terms of processes and systems. So credit to all of those people that coordinated our programs. Thanks. So our K-12 summer school program, we have 3 buildings that are involved. So we have elementary summer semester, we have the middle skill building program and the high school summer school. I will go into each of those in a little bit greater detail. I will. There we go. So our elementary summer session is a project-based learning that's really asks students to become detectives. They begin the process of selecting a topic, they read daily, they write daily, they're working on a research-based project, and then at the end of the summer session, they have developed a product in which they present to staff. They become, and some of the parents attended as well. It is a component of the American Reading Company that we use a portion of throughout the rest of the school year, but the American Reading Company offers the 6-week package that we can use for the summer session and allows us to maintain data that we can use through the regular school year. So we selected that for our summer program. Some celebrations for the elementary summer session. We increased the program this year to 4 days. Last year was only 3 days. We were able to add 4th grade to the program this year. We had an attendance rate increase of 4% from last summer, and 98% of students grew or maintained their reading levels. So that was really great to see. Here are some images of some of the work that happens during the summer program. So you can see our friend up in the right corner is showing her product that she presented at one of the author days. We have this long table filled with books. Students at the conclusion of the program were given the opportunity to take a book home and read it for the remaining weeks of the summer. We were able to give away over 100 books this summer, so it was exciting. In the middle, you can see a product that was developed in collaboration with the general education teacher and the English as a second language teacher. So you can see one side of the product is in the student's native language, and then the other side of the product is in English. So they did some side-by-side work in developing that product. So we had that additional support in the summer, which was really wonderful. The middle skill building program is a skills-based program, really designed to hit some of those basic fundamental reading skills. We used a lot of the rewards intervention program, and that program is designed to improve student comprehension through the use of decomposing words into roots, suffixes, prefixes, and really finding word partners and finding ways to connect meaning to words that they would otherwise not be able to decode, and then applying that to reading comprehension. We also have worked on writing using just a skills-based approach to that. We had, for math, we used the iReady system to not only identify where students were at, but then to appropriately place them in lessons based on their skill development. We were able to personalize their math program. And for social studies and science, they were afforded additional practice in the content areas to make sure they have the fundamental skills entering in the next grade. And you can see we offer different combinations of the content areas based on the grade levels of the students. Celebrations at the middle school, our average reading growth measured using the iReady system exceeded predictable growth for 6 weeks of instruction. The average math growth exceeded predictable growth for 6 weeks of instruction, and our overall attendance rate was 89%. So with the iReady system, when we initially do a diagnostic test on a student, we're given a report which gives us a trajectory of how a student would perform after 10 months of instruction. So using that trajectory, we're able to predict how we would expect them to perform after 6 weeks, and that's how we're able to determine whether or not they have met or exceeded appropriate growth. The high school summer program runs like a pretty traditional summer school, essentially is designed for credit recovery and or exam preparation. It runs 4 days per week, 4 hours each day. There is also opportunities for online recovery, so kids can participate in 2 courses in person and then have additional credit recovery options online for the remainder of the day. You can see we had a total enrollment of 671. 486 of those students were enrolled for the purposes of credit recovery. So the difference between them would be students who walked in for state assessments for the Regents exams and or potentially participated in just the mini courses to give them just that essential content the couple weeks before taking those Regents exams. And celebrations at the high school level, 26 out of 32 graduation eligible students successfully completed what they needed, and we had a really nice graduation ceremony over the summer. Our overall attendance rate was 94%. We had an 82% average passing rate for our courses. We had a 72% average passing rate for our exams, and we added the Spanish mini courses this year. So were there any questions?
Well, thanks very much for the report, Kelly. I was one of the lucky folks in the audience at the summer school commencement ceremony, and it was moving and indeed something to celebrate. I just had a couple of questions about the Regents exam scores by the high schoolers in the summer. For the Algebra 2 and Geometry, there was a slight decline in the passing percentages. I think the numbers of students, was kind of negligible though. But for the Global 10, I think over 100 students took the exam. Whether they enrolled in the summer courses or not, I'm not sure. But there's a little bit of an increase, I think, in the passing score percentage, but still a lot of students still failed the Global 10. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about what happens to those kids and who failed the 2 math Regents, but especially the Global 10. Do they get any extra help? Because I presume that they failed it in August and had failed it maybe in June as well. So during this current school year, do they get any special attention for giving it a crack the 3rd time in January, and can they go ahead and register for American History, 11th grade, while they still haven't passed Global 10?
Okay, so that's a lot of questions, so make sure that I get them all covered. So related to the Global 2, as you know, this year was our first administration of the new transition exam. So while there were reduced multiple choice questions, and in theory there would be a reduced amount of content because you've reduced the time period that's covered in the Global 2 content, the assessment was a little bit different. So the questions were a little more complex. They challenged our kids differently than they have in the past. The test had covered some current events, which we did not, as global history teachers, do not spend a lot of emphasis on current events. So that was something that we will need to take a look at moving forward. And the essay is a different type of writing than our students have had to participate in the past. So in the past, it's been very document-based. This year was an enduring idea essay. So they have to, they select an event or a combination of events, and then they have to tie in the implications of that. And it's a lot more open-ended, and you don't have that dependency on documents. So it's a different type of writing, and while we knew of this throughout the school year, we've only given these students 1 year to be prepared for that type of writing. We, as a district, have been incorporating that type of writing for this current school year, knowing this was coming beginning in 5th grade. So hopefully over time, our students will be better prepared to take that assessment. In terms of what happens if a student is not successful, we will be enrolling them in academic intervention services with a certified social studies teacher from now until January. We also are piloting an APEX tutorial, which is an online program that students can participate in addition to and outside of the day when they are in the academic intervention program. And hopefully we'll have improved results in January with them having that extra time to master that content. If a student is not successful, because there are course requirements that are separate, essentially separate them from the exam requirements, they can go ahead and enroll in the U.S. history. Generally speaking, students are more successful in the U.S. history exam than they are in the global. So they do need at least one social studies regents exam for graduation. So kids who struggle oftentimes will depend on the U.S. history for graduation purposes. Did I answer all of your questions? Okay.
And I just had one more comment about the summer session. You showed a slide, I think maybe it was one of the first ones, about the summer session, summer semester program, that the component by American Reading. It sounds ideal on paper to integrate, the American reading activities with writing. I believe the reading was focused on informational texts, and the writing was, as you mentioned, investigative reporting. So, as follow-ups. And it yielded some very positive results, as you mentioned as well. And it was news to me because it seems like such a specialized program that we bought. It doesn't strike me as something that we've been using throughout the school year. And if that's true, I wonder why, or if there's a plan to, maybe pursue that and keep it going throughout the school year, so we integrate writing with reading under American Reading?
So the summer session is a package that is specific to the summer. So obviously the school year program looks a little bit different. At Kenton, we elected to choose one component of the American Reading Company, which is focused on independent reading, building students' libraries, and background knowledge. The remaining language arts skills are addressed through our other programs. So we have a myriad, given we have some autonomy in the district. So we will often see Lucy Calkins units of study for reading and writing, and we're seeing that more and more prevalent in the buildings. Some teachers are using the modules. So with all of those, we are being mindful of, and we're continuing to have conversations. I've had many conversations already with our directors about making sure that we're offering a well-balanced literacy program, and making sure that when we are teaching the language arts and the reading skills, not the foundational skills, that we are offering a balance of informational text versus the fictional text that is appropriate for the grade level. The guidance we've seen previously is that informational dependency would increase as students get older, and they would learn how to specifically navigate that type of text. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Assistant Superintendent Picotto.
Thank you. I just have two quick items. The first one is our reserve fund and fund balance resolution. Just a quick update to the board. We finished 17-18 with a strong financial year. Our external auditors just wrapped up their audit of that fiscal year, and we'll have a report to you in October, but we're at the point where we can present the fund balance and reserve fund changes for your approval. Just a quick summary. We have reduced our tax tertiary reserve and our employee benefits accrued liability reserve in conjunction with recommendations from the 2015 Comptroller's Report, stating those are underfunded. But we are focusing those and our other funds towards capital reserve as we aggressively prepare for our next capital project. So we have about $6.4 million moving to our capital reserve and $441,000 moving to our relatively new established retirement contribution reserve. And with that, I recommend the fund balance and reserve resolution to the board for approval.
Okay, motion to approve fund balance and reserve resolution as presented. So moved by Tom, second by Chris. Any discussion? There being none, I call for a vote. All those in favor so signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Great. And the only other item is that one of our surplus buses we're proposing be donated to the Newman Center in Amherst. And that concludes my report.
Do we have any update on what's happening with legislation regarding the insurance fund reserve?
I reached out to one of our representatives this past week because we were told that there might be a chance for us to move forward in September. But I guess whatever was going to be discussed and brought back for vote was settled. So it looks like we don't have an opportunity this September. So that's a discussion we should probably continue. Do we want to keep pursuing that insurance reserve? I know that I do, but of course the board would want to make that decision as well. So that's something we may want to look for this next legislative season.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Thank you.
Assistant Superintendent Switek.
I have a couple updates for the board. One is our interactive health program will be continuing to expand at the end of September. We're looking to sit down with the Wellness Committee to include some of the folks that either decided not to go into our wellness program or were unaware and not employed with us yet. So we're looking for an active enrollment period again at the end of September, and we're looking forward to making a healthy choice for our employees. And two other updates that Liza wanted me to update the board on is that she's working with both high school principals, Pat Huyton and Dean Johnson, on an in-house SAT and ACT program free of charge at Kenmore Middle, which she's really looking forward to partnering with our high school principals and making that opportunity available for our high school kids. And another program she asked me to make you aware of is she has done a lot of work partnering with United States Customs and Immigrations. And she's looking to start a 2-hour Immigration 101 course that will deal with naturalization, introduction to the history of our region and our town. And she's really excited about the opportunity to work with these federal groups to help our residents. And also, you'll find in our consensus agenda that I'm looking for approval on the HealthWorks of Western New York contract from HealthWorks. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Switek.
At this point, I recommend the consensus agenda for the board's approval.
Any request to withdraw specific items from consensus? There being none, I call for a motion to approve consensus as presented. So moved by Chris, second, or was that Michelle? Oh, Chris, okay. Second by Andrew. Any discussion? There being none, I call for a vote. All those in favor so signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, welcome. We're thinning out now, because it's getting late. Any other matters that need to be brought before the board? Sure.
I know it's late, so I hesitate to do this, but at last month's board meeting, toward the end, we talked a little bit about the tour that we were given of the Kenmore West athletic facilities, and discussed the prospect of expediting the installation of security cameras there. And I'm just inquiring about the status of that.
John?
So we're still putting quotations and process together to get those cameras in. I don't see it being an issue. Hopefully we can get those in before the weather turns.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that our innovation contest is underway.
Right. Yeah.
So we have a deadline of October 1st, is that correct? October 1st for the initial proposals, so we're just asking for a 2-page abstract from people. Then we'll be going through those and selecting finalists who will be putting together a full presentation, which will be on the evening of November, or the afternoon of November 1st. So
Okay.
we're moving forward with that, and I guess we're getting some good press about it too, it sounds like. So.
Yeah. And this evening, we were also going to establish the dates for the community forum, but if it pleases the board, I think we'll just hold off on that for now, considering that we might be hosting those 2 community forums coming up relatively quickly at both of the high schools, and we may want to spread them out a little bit further. So we'll hang on to that and send out dates from the board, and then of course, I know nothing we'll be good about getting that information out to people, whatever dates are decided. Anything else? Okay. We have no need to adjourn to executive session, so may I have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Andrew, second by Michelle. Any discussion? There being none, I call for a vote. All those in favor so signify with aye. Aye. And we are adjourned. Thank you.